I'm going to be deglossing this door. This is epoxy, and we poured a black marble countertop yesterday, and I'm going to be running 500 grit sandpaper, and I'll stop every so often and go over this. We did put a piece of tape across the door, so we're only going to be deglossing one side so you can see, but I also brought some polish pads, so we might even go to a polish on the other side, but this is your door, so we'll see what you guys want to do. I love when you start really getting into that, sanding through some of those colors, it gives it so much more of a cut rock look. And I don't know if you guys can hear me over the sander, but be sure to ask questions and I will stop and explain anything. This is epoxy, and I'm just cutting the shine off, and right now I'm using 500 grit, and I'm probably going to bump it up to 1,000. Somebody wanted to know how you're doing. There's a couple ways to do vertical surfaces, guys. One way to do a vertical surface is to pour your panel just like we're doing now and just silicone it into place, or use different kind of mounting brackets, you know, depends on what the item is. Shower panels usually I adhere just like I did granite. Wow, that's looking really good though. That is really looking good. Other ways is with a wall epoxy, and I'll show you the difference. So as soon as I'm done sanding here, I'll kind of take you guys out in the hallway and show you guys wall epoxy versus this countertop epoxy that we poured. So you can kind of decide. There's just different tools. Both work really well. I love working with both, but a lot of it depends on the look you want and what your goals are, what your objectives are for that kitchen, bathroom, whatever the space is. Do most of your cutting with your coarser grits, so all you're doing is adjusting your sheen level with your finer grits. You don't want to be trying to sand with 1,000 as hard as you tried to work with the 500. The 500 should have done a ton of that work, so, and actually cutting and taking off the epoxy you want to. So when we remove this tape, you'll really see the difference between the two cuts. So you don't really have to step it quite as much as you do with automotive paint. So instead of going 500, 800,000, you can usually just go 500,000. I usually, you know, double my grit level, so which is actually cutting it in half. Now I'm going to hit 1,000 and see what I get out of that. But I will wipe this down first lightly. Now I'm not going really ultra shiny, so I'm not concerned with this being perfectly dust free. But if we were going to a totally dust-free surface, we'd want to really get all this off of there. How's everybody today? Remember, ask any questions, guys.
Someone wanted to know about doing a 4-inch lip on the backsplash, like vertical.
Yep, 4-inch lip. Pretty simple to do. Just pour a simple color, and don't torch it at all. Let it naturally be really gentle and careful how you pour it, so you get as much of that product naturally pouring off as possible, so you don't have a lot of veins looking like drips and whatnot. So just keep your pattern simple. So people that go really crazy doing those backsplashes start making fake looking stuff, but if you keep your pattern really simple, it should look great. Now this is 1,000 here. Now you notice how much less dust there is. That's because this is the correct festool paper that has the holes on it for it to actually pull the excess cut particles through there. So keep it moving. The one reason I move a little more with epoxy than some surfaces is I don't want to put water down to wet sand, and I don't want this to be building up heat and gumming up my pads. So I just kind of keep this moving. And it's feeling really good. In person, these feel amazingly smooth. Oh, there, it's looking really good now. It's starting to get, usually you'll see when you start getting a really even cut on it, guys, and you start getting that 1,000 properly done, you'll start getting to see a little bit smoother, darker of a color. It doesn't look quite as scuffed. And it'll continue through any of those levels that you want to polish it all the way up to 5,000. You can even put polishing paste after that. Notice this is starting to look a little better, I think, and I love the degloss look. It really adds just depth and makes it look so much more like an actual natural piece of stone. If there was a teenager that cut on this, all you'd need to do is take this 1,000 grit paper, and it would take you about 30 seconds to get any kind of scuff or cut mark out of this countertop. So you know what? This might be risky to do right now, and I probably shouldn't do this on a live, but here's a new key. Yeah, I got that cut. So that is a scratch that I can actually stop my fingernail in. But let's say that's your countertop well. So I'm gonna attempt now just to polish this back out with our 1,000 grit paper. I have done this in person very successfully. I'm actually really good at everything. No, I'm not, but grab one, just run over it with a fine one and polish it out and see if I see it at all. See if we can find it. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but I see 90% of it's gone, but I still see a tiny little bit of the scar on there. But I don't know if you guys can. See it anywhere in there now. Well, that worked. Now, as you cut through the vein, the way we got a lot of these colors is by pouring epoxy through epoxy on a stick, and then we sprayed alcohol with accent colors on here. There are metallic accent colors. And they set on top, so as we sand, we're really cutting through quite a bit of them, and you'll actually see a totally different look. So this should look, when we peel the tape, like a very cut geode versus something that did have the colors set on top. So generally it looks a little more realistic. So I'm just going to finish across this with my 1,000, and we'll peel the tape off, and then I'm going to show you maybe a little more of a polish and a cleaning and show you what we're looking for. Sorry, I just bored you guys to death with a sander right there. And I don't know if you guys want me to just leave it the glossy and then the deglossed, or if you guys want me to polish the polished side. So kind of leave this up to Michael. He's the one that sees more of what you guys are responding with. Why am I doing this? I just wanted to give a deglossed look to one side. A lot of people like that satin matte look, knocking the sheen off. And you can probably pretty evidently see. I'm not sure, who knows what you guys like most in person, but I would guess that if you guys could see this from our side, I know which one I think you'd choose. So, man, that feels good. I don't know. You guys are probably need to fly to Colorado just so you can feel my stuff. So if you show up, I'll let you slide your the smoothness right there. So that is amazing. All right, I don't know if anybody wanted to see a polish or anything. Was anybody interested?
Oh, they had it.
Yeah, they're fine. I'll start out with a 3, which will actually degloss it significantly. A lot of people think 3000 sounds like crazy because on, say, like wood, yeah, on wood, 3000 actually would be significantly like really shiny, a high shine with like a lacquered wood or whatever, but like 5000 is actually just barely going to be a shine back in person, so we'll see. I have 5 of you out there. Somebody probably knows more about sanding than me, but I'll show you something. If you notice here, this one's thick and squishy and this one's not. This is 1000, this is 3000. So usually your more coarse pads that are made for cutting, they're also flatter. They don't have any give, because if you have an uneven surface, you don't want there to be a lot of give, because you want this to actually have to cut the top of those highs off, and you want to create a profiled level surface. And if you feel the bottom of the sander here, the bottom of this Festool sander, it's very flat. The bottom of the sander is very flat and it's very firm. I don't like to buy a pad with a lot of give, because you can always buy spacing pads with foam if you want to add a pad that does have give to it. But then you get up into more of your polished pads, and now you should have all your contour and cutting high spots off, and you should have got your grit back up. So now you can actually work with a foam back pad, and they become really forgiving. And as long as you keep them moving and you don't overheat them, but you actually just try to work with them, you can get a lot of life out of it with these 3 and 5000 grit foam back pads. But don't burn them all up in one spot, because these are like $25 pads sometimes, depending on which ones you get. So I'll try to just be accurate and go up my line here. I'm going to show you guys something. I'll pull the hose off here, and I'm going to grab some water, and I'll show you the difference between cutting with water versus this. All right, now we'll pop our air off here, because we don't want to be adding air to our mix. And yes, I do go through a ton of sanders, but as often as we use them, I don't really get. I want to be able to get performance when we use them. So now I'm trying to reach here. A little bit of water. This will really, it'll really splatter everywhere apparently. What you'll really notice with this water is it's going to add the ability to really cut and clean this pad, so it never dirties up or gums up. You can get a lot of life out of your finer polishing pads just by adding a little bit of water. And now you don't have to get a garden hose out and soak this, but make sure you keep it wet enough that there's constantly a little bit of a slurry. And you'll really feel when it's cleaning and cutting versus when it's just sliding on that surface. You'll also see, like through here, it's real shiny and you go across it, but you see that surface tension. You see the surface tension, and as you really cut it, you see it breaks that tension and you get a real even cut. So you can really find ways to stay pretty organized while you're sanding. You really want to know how much time you spent on about each spot. Make sure you're not missing areas. I never polish epoxy hardly. Unless I'm doing a really nice finished piece, I'm not usually polishing it. I always have people asking me about polishing it, especially if there's damage. And this is the same step we'd go through, just like we finished the damage, fixed the key mark I left over there. This is how, if you wanted a high sheen, you'd be polishing your countertop back out like this. Epoxy does very well with heat, high-end epoxy like this. This epoxy is 500 degree temperature rated for incidental contact with heat. And the water boils at 212 at sea level, which means, you still have 300 degrees to go, so it's significant. You can burn oil in a pan usually. Now, I would never recommend using it as a hot surface, but as far as for accidents, it's a very forgiving surface for that. Yeah, you definitely could, but I'm about to clean this right back off. That also, dish soap also would slow it from drying a little bit, but I just grabbed a water bottle and I didn't want to pause your guys' live for too long. So, but very good idea. I usually have a bottle of spray soapy water, but what's that? Did they want to know about it? Yeah, oh yeah, and I was going to do the diamond shield on this too, show them. Okay, so now you're going to see a real streaked surface, I'm sure. I'll get it dry though, so it should look a little cleaner. But if you notice, it's very, very satin, and that is because 3000 is not a polish, but nobody ever believes that. I've had people try to polish with like 500. Okay, now I'll grab my 5000, and now you should start really actually seeing what we were trying to do a little better. A little better example of what we were trying to get. 5,000? Yeah, now that's 5,000. And another foam back pad. starting to get shiny now. That shine's really coming back. There's actually nothing nicer than like a repolished countertop. It just looks so flat and perfect. Wow, see a perfect cut through. That's nice.
Where do you buy your sanding supplies?
You know, automotive paint supply shops tends to be the very best place to get sanding pads, just because I've never seen anything else that good of a deal on that type of stuff. And no other, like Lowe's, Home Depot, and Menards, places like that don't tend to actually carry the correct type of sandpaper. So just run down to an automotive paint supply shop. So. And then figure out what works, and then just buy it on Amazon, of course. And that works pretty well. Any other questions, guys? Do we have any? Now that, I don't know if you guys can see, but you end up with such a nice cut sheen with that 5,000 on there.
What are you spraying?
Just alcohol, just cleaning off that dust, guys. Just a little bit of alcohol. I don't know if you can see how that depth, but the more you polish it, the more of the shine you get back. And now if you wanted it to look really finely glossed, all we'd do is we'd take a abrasive polishing paste and we'd run that right over the surface. But what I'm going to do right now, because I want to leave it at about that cut, but I still want to seal it in, is I'm going to use our diamond shield here. And the diamond shield here it's a nano coating, and is meant to actually fill in open molecules of epoxy, because epoxy is very durable and bonds well to substrates, but it's a very closed, tight molecule structure. And this is not a coating that goes on top and coats it. This actually fills in the open molecule structure, kind of like if you could imagine grout between tile. So just imagine you're mortaring brick or something on a really tiny molecular level. So usually I take a lint-free cloth and I really wrap it up, because I'm cheap. I don't want to go buy some fancy applicator. This works just perfect. So a little lint-free cloth. I'll pour a tiny little bit out on my surface. You don't want to do too large of an area at one time, guys. Just do what you know you can completely finish. We're going to wipe it on.
If you were going to do a 10K grit,
you know, you can keep bouncing up. You can go. I usually run to a paste after 5,000, but that's just me. So, I mean, and like I say, I'm not the most expert polishing guy in the world. There's a lot of ways to polish epoxy, so I know successful ways to do it. There's a lot of guys that know tons of ways to do it. So I'm going to try to get this off of there a little sooner, because it's black. It's pretty unforgiving. You definitely don't want to let this totally dry on the surface. It just takes a little bit longer to get off. I'm going to keep working down this way. I'm just going to start taking this, going back down here, and just distributing this. I'm going to just keep working the same area over and over and over now that I see it starting to dry. And I'm going to work that off of this. And then I'll move. I was hoping to get a little further done, but that's my ultimate and most average mistake, is rushing things. Not being as patient as I should be. Kids teach me to be patient, and people are like, yeah, you get impatient with kids. And I mean, of course I make mistakes, but it's funny. Kids are so perfect, they just make you want to be better at all those little things. So it's easy. You start getting better at things with them, and it makes you think you should do it in other parts of your life. Or if anybody has questions, feel free to ask. Because one mistake people make is they try to layer this on, and I've done that before. Create a layer, or you just do the whole countertop before you stop to polish all the excess off. Don't ever do that. It's just a little too long. So I'm working together now and just polishing any little wet stuff off. And man, I don't know if you can see in the camera, but man, in person, this is the shiniest, smoothest surface.